Welcome to Research Matters with Unda and Kuda, an online show that is all about communicating the research taking place at NUST in efforts to promote the university's research agenda and the impact thereof.
And just like that, it is time for another episode of Unda and Kuda right here on NUST FM. Today in the house, before I even get there, how are you, Unda?
I'm doing well. Funny enough, I had a very interesting experience yesterday. So I had gone for training and, we did not prepare for the weather that followed. So I was soaking wet. I'm surprised you can still hear my voice today, but yeah, an experience in itself. But,
I think... voice or no voice, I don't even know if you can say no voice, the show must go on, right?
The show must go on.
No, it's great. So it's great having you here. Now, in the house today, we have Ms Gaby Hansen. She's a lecturer from the let me get this right. Lecturer of Architecture, Planning and Construction at NUST. Did I get that right?
That's correct.
Okay,
yes.
Awesome. Gaby, we can dive right into it. Who is Gaby Hansen?
All right, so thanks very much for the invitation, first of all. I'm really humbled and privileged to speak to you today. So I come from a very mixed background, so I'm a multicultural person. I always make a joke. I'm the inverse of a coconut.
Unpack that for us. Tell us more.
Yes, I might be light in complexion, but my DNA is really rooted in this multicultural essence of, we have the German, a bit of Hereru, a bit of Namadama.
Oh, wow.
So I can...
Would have never guessed.
Yeah.
I come across very whitish, if I can put it straightforward. As from heart, I am a really natural type of person. I very introverted sometimes, very caring, and I love to be in nature. And I think that is what sparked my, interest in the built environment.
You know what I absolutely love about that? Just the whole being mixed, a mocktail, right? I think it's absolutely lovely because this is really the world that we're in nowadays. Everybody's got such a mixed background if you go down your heritage and so forth. And also at the Namibia University of Science and Technology, we promote diversity. So you're in the right place.
Yes.
I was about to ask, do you speak any of the languages, or, are you predominantly Afrikaans, English, German? Which languages, or what languages do you speak?
So I'll put it in a chronological
order.
We're
ready.
So we grew up predominantly Afrikaans,
Okay.
English, German, and then we know a little bit of Nama, the basics.
Okay.
My mom always jokes, and she says the reason why she didn't teach us Nama Damara was that she can have a private conversation with people. So, and when she wants to, have this secretive, conversations, then we have no clue what she's talking about.
A focused woman right there. But if we had to take it back to your field of studies or your interest in research, what would you say to a first-year student that has no idea in what direction they want to go, and more specifically in terms of what you do?
Okay, I think it basically starts off with what is your interest. And you need to really dig deep and understand what is that passion that I would like to foster, and what type of impact you would like to make in the long run, in the short, medium, long term. So in basic terms, like I just mentioned, because I love nature, I grew up playing outside, which we don't see nowadays with the new generation.
Yeah.
They are not
We're in the
aware.
metaverse.
Is that what it's called? Yeah.
and we are slowly losing touch of our surrounding and what's happening in our surroundings. So my interest really revolves around, so I will start off with, I have a first degree in architecture, then I specialized in landscape architecture. So when you bring those two disciplines together, it really opens up so many avenues and understanding of how the environment is put together. So when we talk about landscape architecture, and it's a profession that is not well recognized in our context, it really starts off with the environment, the landscape that we're living in.
Now, did you know what you always wanted to do?
Yeah.
Yes. So
Oh, wow.
Based on research you've done, or were you exposed to it?
yeah.
How did
So-
you get into it?
Yeah, so it's actually serendipitous because my father is a civil engineer with a little bit of drafting background, and my mom is a teacher.
Okay.
So I think that DNA was weaved and developed, so that allowed, these ideas of understanding the profession in the industry, but then also translating it into teaching and learning. So yeah, I think that is how that developed.
That's good. So I think essentially what she's saying is you must also do your research
Yeah.
before you get into research and all of that, just to figure out. But was there ever a point where you're like, maybe I should try something else?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I studied architecture, I felt like the object in itself was highlighted or was way too dominant. So, and then I decided, look, there should be, other avenues to explore, different things about the built environment. So, and that's where the nature type of, feel for the environment was reinvigorated and, came to fruition. So, yeah, so definitely I think really do research, and personally in yourself first.
Yes.
And then look at, what are the things out there that you find interesting, that you will be able to develop a passion for. But I think at the end of the day, it's about passion. Because if you are passionate about something, you will love doing what you're doing.
All right, now, Ms. Gaby, I'm just curious to know, you had the option to, I would assume you had the option to either, step into the lecturing role or practice in the industry. What made you divert rather to lecturing and being, at the forefront of the education, rather than just practicing in a architecture firm, for example?
Yeah, so when I worked for a few years in the industry, and like I mentioned, I got so fed up with the object, right?
Unpack that for us. What do you mean when you say the
when we
object?
talk about the object, we refer to this built product, right? And the built product is always emphasized as the most important
Thing.
in a particular space. But if you think about it, the entire space should work holistically together, right? That inside-outside relationship is very important. And I think through that, and because landscape architecture currently is not recognized as a discipline, as a profession in our context, I decided to go into the teaching realm, because in this particular space, I could slowly but surely make students attentive of the importance of landscape architecture.
An influencer.
Yeah.
Some
The
sort.
real influencers.
Hashtag the real influencers. Now, we know you're involved in a number of projects. Can you tell us about that particularly? I know there's one called Glow Local. I had to practice. Am I saying it right?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay,
After
what
all
I
the
said.
practice.
After all the I've been practicing the wrong thing. Can you tell us how do I say? First of all, how do I say it, and what is it about?
Yes. So it's called STG, Go Local. So local is a combination of global and local combined in one word.
Go.
Local.
Glocal.
Local.
Glocal.
Okay.
Yes.
At least you got it right.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. Now tell us, what is it all about?
So it's about, it's 3 universities that are collaborating in a 4-year project. And the 3 universities is NUST, University of Stuttgart, and Ansheim's University of Cairo, Egypt. And what we're trying to achieve is to say, okay, what is this SDG all about? It's this global, broad ideas. None of us know what these unions have put together. It's all broad, and it's mostly quantitative type of engagement in these topics. So what we're trying to do is to say, okay, how do we take these SDGs through teaching and
Which is
learning,
the Sustainable Development Goals.
which is the Sustainable Development Goals, through teaching, learning, through research, and localize them on the ground, right? In the context that you're working in. Because we feel that it's important to understand what does that mean at that level. So through this collaboration, we're trying to achieve a co-productive learning and research so that we can actually engage and discuss various topics and see how we can really, foster and enhance these ideas of what a sustainable city could look like in your context.
So now when you're doing this work, this project, these studies, any community engagement, any communities that you work with, and what kind of work?
So we've got NAG, which is the Namibia Housing Action Group, and we have a long-standing relationship with them, I think over 10 years. Through this collaboration with NAG, we develop, this relationship where we can go out into various informal settlements and we can really engage with the various topics. And what we're trying to achieve now is to flip the narrative by saying it's not a top-down development or planning, but we need to think about bottom-up. Because at the end of the day, it's the user that's important. It's the person that's living in that space that is currently making a difference, and we're wanting to enhance that and create alternative ways of how we upgrade our settlements and not do the mundane and standardized way of doing things.
All right, now well said. Gaby, thank you so much. We will be back, of course. I just want the listeners to sieve in everything that you've just communicated. So we'll take a quick musical break and we'll play a song that was requested here by Ms Gaby Hansen. And this one is titled This Town by Jeremy Loops featuring Lady Smith. Do stick and stay. If you just joined us, welcome back. This is still Research Matters with Unda and Kuda right here on NUST FM, and we are live in studio with Gaby Hansen, a lecturer of architecture, planning and construction. Now, Ms. Gaby, maybe we can just look back at the song that just played. There's obviously a specific reason as to why it was your choice of selection. So maybe just what does it make you think of? What does it remind you of?
Yeah, so the title, it says This Town. So, and because we're working in very vulnerable spaces, like informal settlements mostly, it's about really uplifting the community and by saying, okay, he speaks about who's going to save us, right? And I think it's not just one person or, the government or whatever the
entities are.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's about a collective. We all need to come together and we need to lift each other up and make our towns a little bit better.
Right, Ms. Gaby, maybe we can look at some of the innovative trends that you have in your field. What are those trends at the moment?
Okay. So
We went serious real quickly.
Yes, and especially because you highlighted that you've been specifically at NUST since 2010, you
Yes.
said. What has changed? What do you see is different in the fields, as Unda asked?
yeah, I think, basically nowadays AI has taken over and AI is not let me put it plainly, it's not a bad thing, right? Because you can really come up with very interesting architecture, if I can put it that way, because it allows you to take on the environment and understand what the environment is about, and then also create these architectural objects that suits that specific environment. So AI has definitely taken over by storm in a matter of fact in the last 2 years. So AI is one of those biggest trends that we are, it's both it has its advantages, but it's also disadvantages.
I think like with anything, the advantages, disadvantages, use it for good, tech for good, as they always say. And I think that, this is my personal opinion, I'm like, AI, tech, it's not going anywhere. You
No.
might as well embrace it. Just
Exactly.
know how to use it for good,
Exactly.
right?
And for the good.
Yes. Now, which also now leads me to our next question. We cannot talk about research without talking about publications. Is there any work you've been involved in or any work that you aspire to be involved in when it comes to publications?
Okay, so publications is always a nightmare to publish your work.
You're in the field, that's the fun stuff, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Now you must document
Exactly.
it.
So it's so much more fun to be in the field, but when it comes to finding a journal to publish your work, to see the worth of what you are trying to advocate for, it's always a struggle. So we try and find various platforms. Like for instance, last year December I presented on the research, the landscape research group. Various stakeholders and people come together and we talk about specific topics related to the landscape, and then we as a department we also try to find other platforms. So it is a struggle. I won't lie. And I've written a chapter in a book, which is also 40 perspectives on global South urbanism. That was published now in the beginning of the year, if I'm not mistaken. So,
I always say publications or journals rather are the Instagram of academics and
for
research.
sure.
Instagram.
If you're not there, everybody's
Yeah.
like, okay, if it's not published, then nothing happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's true. Now, maybe we can look at some of the challenges that you faced as a lecturer, maybe even just with students in terms of how you educate them. Do they receive the knowledge well? Because I think the one thing that you would like is to make sure that the people that follow can then take up the research space once you've left. So what are some of your challenges that you experience with students most in your teaching and classrooms?
I wouldn't necessarily say there are challenges per se with the students. It's actually very funny. When they look at me, they're like, "Oh, you look like a student," right? So,
Yeah.
and then they think, this is an easy, a scapegoat.
Mm.
But when they start hearing this little dynamic of a woman, they, I always say respect is very important. So it doesn't matter whether, you're this tiny or big person, whatever the case may be. So I think the challenges are maybe predominantly, their backgrounds, right? The accessibility to various, spaces or technology or that type of thing, But in essence, I think the students are comfortable because we try and keep it, on the ground, very simple. And if we need to sketch things, we take the paper, go back to the old school, and we document things, hand, head, paper coordination. So, and I think maybe those are most of the challenges, but overall, I seem to be very optimistic and look at the strengths rather than the weaknesses and challenges.
I think the one thing that stands out is just that you've created an inclusive classroom or environment for students to learn. So I think that you can tick off as well and say, okay, that's the one thing that I've done great, because sometimes lecturers don't have the patience to sort of hold on and wait for everyone to catch up. So they run with those that are at the pace, that is required. So it's nice that you've created an environment where you try to include every student that's in your class.
I always say, look, even I am the facilitator. I don't want to be seen as the teacher. And what's very important is that we all still learning.
Yes.
I'm learning
as
also
you
from
go
the
along. That is
Yeah.
true. That is true.
So we are in this learning environment. We're giving and taking, and we're giving and taking. So learning by doing and doing by learning.
talking about that sense of community, that inclusivity that Unda just alluded to now, I must say this is now me looking for them from the outside, in air quotes, looking from the outside in. I get a sense that in your department there's this inclusivity. There's a lot of industry partnerships. There's a lot of work that the students are really actively engaged with this through work integrated learning. There's a whole community going on, and that's very admirable. How do you get it right? What can other departments perhaps that are looking up to you to say, how do you get this sense of community? How do we forge these industry partnerships? What would you say?
I think it's about building the relationship and really fostering the relationship with your various partners, because if you don't foster that engagement with your stakeholders, they tend to just say, look, this is it, we had enough, and we depart. But building relationships and having open communication is key
to maintaining those relationships.
Exactly.
And I think one word that you really spoke about that stood out for me is trust. There must be trust. Keep your word.
Exactly.
Know exactly what your vision is about, and just be trustworthy,
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, for my next question, now when you're, say there's somebody out there right now, whether it's in specifically, say I'm looking at first years, I'm always thinking of first years because that's where you start the journey, right? And they're on the verge of giving up. Yes, just a few weeks in already, they're like, you know what, maybe this
is a lot.
No, this is a lot, I'm done. Anxiety, imposter syndrome, and what would you say just to motivate them?
So I come back to what is your passion, right? And your passion should drive every decision that you make. And I've got a motto, right, since childhood. And I just need to read it to you. Just give me a few seconds.
Yeah, while she's doing that, it also just shows you how everybody's on a journey, right? And you don't always know what it is that you want to do, or if you're blessed enough to do it, doesn't mean that there's no downtime.
Yeah.
There are times where you're like, I can't anymore.
We're all human.
Yeah, so Gabby's going to tell us her motto.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've had this motto since childhood, and it's something that was driven by my parents. The saying goes, I will and I can, right? But it comes specifically from Philippines 4 verse 13. I can do all things through him who strengthens me, for I can do everything through Christ who gives me the strength. Whatever I have, wherever I am, I can make it through anything in the one who makes me who I am. So I think that's very important. And if you just think about, if you want to, you will.
Amen.
As simple as that.
So yes, we all have downtimes, and it's fine, but you need to just, find that inner strength. And if this is your passion and you really want to, live out this passion, you hold steadfast into that will.
All right, well said. Thank you so much for your time, Ms. Hansen. It was absolutely inspirational, and I think leaving it also on such a beautiful note. But that doesn't mean this is the end of Research Matters with Unda and Kuda, because we will be here every other Tuesday to inspire you and bring you guests who are insightful and have great industry knowledge and practical knowledge to share with you in terms of research. But with that, you can catch the details for our next episode of Research Matters with Unda and Kuda by following the Research, Innovation and Partnerships at NUST pages, that is on Facebook and LinkedIn, as well as following us on NUST FM, and that is on our Facebook and Instagram pages as well. And don't forget, our podcasts are available now on the NUST YouTube page. So in case you have missed our previous episodes, head on over to our YouTube channel and obviously catch up on some of the podcasts that we have up. And I'll leave you with the sounds of the one and only called out music, and this one is titled Say That I Love You, a special request by Ms Gaby as well in studio. But for now, do stick and stay to NUST FM, because we are reinventing sound.